So that went well. The dreams of ending the season with a double really sort of came to fruition. Kind of, not really, not at all. Yeah, it was a disaster class. It was awful. It was the second worst game of football I've watched all season, and it is the third worst game of football that I've watched across the last two seasons. But before we talk about any of that in any further detail, please do like the video if you enjoyed. Comment down below your thoughts on the game. Comment down below your thoughts on how well your team did this season, because this video is kind of going to act as a season review. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Remember, if I hit 1,000 subscribers, I'll shave all of this hair off, right? So like, let's if you think about it, right? Let's just like, just cover it all up, sort of. I'll be looking like this, so like, I think that'd be pretty jokes. So, oh, whoa. So yeah, but yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the FA Cup final, because I don't really have too much to say. I think that game proved why we can't lose Ederson, and that why Ortega, although he's a good backup, he can't be our first choice, because I just don't think although he was going to play this game regardless, because he plays every FA Cup game, it wasn't good. I think he definitely could have saved Mainoo's shot, and I don't think he should have. And for Garnacho's goal, if you're coming out, you've got to get the ball. No matter if your centre back's going for it. If you're coming out, you've got to go through. He has to go through Gvardiol and Garnacho just to win that ball, or he stays back on his line. You don't get stuck in no man's land. That's like sort of like the one thing you don't do. And it reminds me of the game against Arsenal during Project Restart, where Ederson just ran through Eric Garcia and knocked him out. That's probably one of the best things Ederson's ever done, because forcing Eric Garcia off the pitch is always a positive. But yeah, the first goal wasn't great. Again, I think Ortega definitely could have done better for both goals. The second goal was Kyle Walker being an absolute disgrace. And I don't want to see him ever play a game of football for the club again, because the way he's talked in the media recently about how winning the Euros would mean more to him than the treble, and that losing the cup final doesn't really matter because we've already won the league. It's not really like stuff I want to be hearing from my club captain. Like, you're meant to be the leader. You're meant to be like driving us on to succeed more, and you're talking in such a defeatist attitude. I don't really like that. Also, his performance on the pitch has been a disgrace. He didn't pick up Mainoo for an entire run and tried to intervene when it was too late, and bam, then we go 2-0 down. That's probably Bernardo Silva's last game for City, and I think it is probably time to call it a day for Bernardo. There's been plenty of games this season where he just hasn't turned up, especially off the right wing. And yes, there are games I can mention where Bernardo's played well, but there are a lot more games this season where Bernardo's played bad compared to where he's played well. And he was non-existent on Saturday, completely non-existent, and it just wasn't a good performance from him. There were many chances we had, and they were just unlucky not to go in. It was one of those days where, when some of those chances don't go in, it's going to be a long day for you. I don't think, as weird as it is to say, because this is a natural position, I don't think Ake can play centre back anymore. Like, after watching him play centre back on Saturday, I was just like, wow, like, you're actually like such a better left back than you are centre back, because he did look a little lost at centre back. But I don't know if that was because he was playing next to Stones, and they don't really play next to each other in a two very often. We looked a lot better when Akanji came on. We looked a lot better when Doku came on. And it was probably just because we weren't playing with any urgency in the first half. There were many times where we definitely could have went at United and scored, because they didn't. Every time we ran at United and looked to cause a bit of damage, they didn't know how to deal with it. But they were so good at playing a nice, like, flat back four with their two holding midfielders being Amrabat and Mainoo, dropping in and preventing us from pinging our comfortable passes on the edge of their box, that they were able to deal with all the attacks. But when we actually looked to make things happen, with, for example, Doku running at them, they looked a lot more shaky, and it was definitely they were there for the taking at multiple points at 0-0, and we just didn't take the chance. They go 1-0 up off of a questionable goalkeeping and defensive mistake. Once again, we just don't kick into gear. We get complacent. We probably look at their league position, look at what we did to them in the league, and we just think, we're favourites here. We can just kick on whenever. And obviously, we went for the win a bit too late. Obviously, only really looking to create dangerous chances with like 75 minutes on the clock, and that's just not how you. It's not how you win competitions, especially against your biggest rivals that have a point to prove. Losing to you twice already this season and losing to you in the cup final last season is, But I'm not that too sad about losing. I think, as long as we won last year's and we got the treble, I don't think losing this year's is that big of a deal. I think obviously it's sad, but and the performance was pathetic, but it's not something I'm going to be disheartened over. At the end of the day, we just go again next season with probably a completely different looking squad, because there are definitely people that aren't going to be here next season. And if I look at some of the players that have performed potentially poorly this season, I think we could definitely move on and make a profit. Again, I'll start with Walker. We're not going to make a profit on Walker. We're not going to make any money on Walker, but I think he needs to go. I think he's a liability defensively, and his attitude as a captain stinks. He's not a good enough captain. He's not a good enough player, but I'm not going to spend too much time on him because you all know how I feel about him. Bernardo again as well. Take the 50 million for his release clause. He can't, for as good as he's been the past few seasons, obviously not this season included with him being poor this season, I'm not having another summer of him hold as ransom and hold as hostage for him to stay when he hasn't shown this season at all that he should stay at the club. So as much as it'll be sad, it'll be a lot of people want to keep him for sentimental value. I think yes, it's time for Bernardo to go. Looks like we're losing Nunes. He didn't really do much this season, so it doesn't really matter. I think if we get a big bid, if we get a decent sized bid for Alvarez, I think we could definitely move him on. I think there are definitely better backup strikers that can play a more versatile role that Pep wants his backup striker to do than Alvarez. I think he's too one-dimensional as a 9, and he doesn't we can't have two one-dimensional 9s, especially with how Pep wants to use Alvarez. It just doesn't work when he plays as a 10, when he plays out wide. He's only really good as a 9, not really going to get that much opportunity as an out-and-out 9. So if we can make a bit of money on him, maybe bring in a more versatile player, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, try get rid of Phillips for at least some money to get him off the wage bill, bring in another 6, and then eye up someone that will potentially can replace De Bruyne long term. Obviously, Foden is here, but it's always best to have two creative midfielders. So if we can bring in someone that can potentially not play much next season, but learn and fit the mold of that sort of position, would also be good. Obviously, bring in a right back as well. Obviously everyone talks about bringing either Porro or Frimpong back, and I wouldn't be opposed to either really, but it depends I think it all depends on which one you can get for cheap and which one is less of a net negative to us, given how much we sold each one for and how much we bring one back in. So the thing is, Frimpong obviously puts up the better numbers, but he's not exactly Premier League proven, whereas Porro is Premier League proven. So I'd probably lean towards Porro for instant impact, but Frimpong would probably be the better option long term and would probably be a better gamble. But that's enough of the players that need to leave and positions that need to come in. I just think the season wasn't bad. We've won the title 4 years in a row. We've won the title again off the back of a treble season. You can't complain with a title winning season, but the levels of performance we put up and periods of points of the season were awful. I think end of the first half of the season, coming in the middle of the season, end of the first half of the season was disgraceful. I think our performances against top 6 teams were awful. Our performances in big games were terrible. And we probably did get lucky to win the league with how the teams around us played against the lower opposition. yeah, I think we definitely need to go back to the City of old and just take the game to these big teams and make it difficult for them and not allow them to play their game. Which is, a lot of it is just been sitting back. Obviously, with the exception to Chelsea, who for some reason we just played some high line and let them attack us and had them score questionable after questionable goal in the league anyway. So yeah, I think we definitely need to up our performances against the big teams, whether that be in Europe, again, because the Real Madrid game wasn't great. The game against big teams in the Premier Leagues weren't great. I think we can't play against big teams like that next year and expect to win any trophies, really. We definitely did get lucky to not go trophyless this season, so I'm not going to complain about it winning the Premier League, despite the fact that we played awful. But I think there definitely needs to be improvements on the team, probably a bit of a rebuild, a reshuffle, get some of the older, more complacent players out for some new, hungrier players. Because if you look at some of our better performers in the latter half of the season, you look at Doku, Vardiol, and even Kovacic in some games, the people that haven't won this trophy before, giving it their all to finally get one of the winners' medals around their neck. You know, sometimes you need that hunger and that fire in your belly, and you don't always get that with people that have won 5-6 Premier League titles. So, you know, I think it's definitely time to move on from some of the senior players and bring in some new blood and just have a bit of a reshuffle and have a rethink of how we're going to approach big games, because we looked toothless and shameful against big teams, and we definitely can't do that next season if we're expecting to win any trophies. But that's all I've really got to say on the season. Disappointing to have it end the way it did, but you know, one trophy is better than no trophies, especially when it's the second biggest one we were competing for. So you know, it's at the end of the day, it's not that bad. But comment down below what you think of. What you thought of City's season, how you thought your club season went, and also tell me down below who do you think City need to move on, and who should they bring in to replace these players, and you know, where should some of these players like Bernardo or Alvarez potentially end up next season. But yeah, with all that being said, like the video if you enjoyed, comment down below your opinions like I just said, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Remember, 1,000 subscribers and I'll shave all my hair off. But with all that being said, I've been Nathan, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Shut down cases, they belly dots to the can't see faces, chasing the bad guy chase it. You don't wanna be the one like Ace and like GTA trying to turn them out wasted. Aye, tell a bad bitch come break it, body come mad, come shake it, then get back to the basics, bro, don't shut down cases, they belly dots to the